Like, I can't take him serious. The fact that Calabria is taking him serious is interesting, but like, I personally couldn't take him serious. Hi guys, so I will be reviewing Love is Blind season 9, episodes 1 and 2. So a lot happened in these episodes, so I'm just gonna jump right in and get started. So we first start out with Casey, and she is talking to a guy named Patrick. So Casey is like this cute blonde. She's 27 years old, I believe. And then Patrick is an Asian American. So Casey kind of goes into just some depth about how she was in a long-term relationship up until she was about 27 years old. And then after she was 27, she was left single, and she's been dating throughout that time. So I'm sorry, I think Casey's actually 32. So she was single at 27 after a long-term relationship. Now she's 32 years old, and she's kind of like getting back out there again. She mentions one thing about how she's always been cheated on. And personally for me, I feel like whenever anybody says that they've been cheated on all the time by all their exes, I see that as a little bit of a sign for possible self-reflection, because what are the odds that you pick a bunch of guys that just cheat? I find that a little bit strange. And then she goes into some detail about how one guy she was seeing, there was always just another like hot blonde around the corner, like almost like he had a wandering eye. And she makes a comment and says something along the lines of, she compared herself to these women and was like, oh, why don't I look like them? I thought that was kind of strange, because I was like, the last thing you want to be feeling is like you need to compare yourself to other girls. But I like Casey. I think she's very sweet, but I pick up on her having like bad taste in men, like her picker probably being questionable, because yeah, I was like, how is everybody cheating on you? And how are you getting with guys that are comparing you to other women? I'm like, that's the biggest red flag ever. So I don't know, but she seems sweet, and I hope that she does find someone. So we start with there, and she grew up Mormon, but she's no longer Mormon. So then we go into Patrick, and Patrick is an Asian American. He works remote. I know Casey mentioned that she likes to travel a lot. So Patrick said that he, that traveling is something that he would be open to doing, considering he works remote. And that so Patrick mentions that he puts a lot of effort into dating. He then goes into his background being an Asian American living in Denver, Colorado, a place that is predominantly white, and how he feels like his ethnicity has impacted his dating abilities and some of the results that he's been getting in dating, just due to a lack of diversity and him feeling like people maybe are not open to dating out. So that's kind of the conversation that they have. I didn't necessarily see sparks flying between them, but I think it was like a good background into kind of where they're coming from. So we'll kind of see where that connection goes. So now we see Patrick talking to a woman named Anna, who is another Asian American. And Patrick asks Anna who she mainly dates in like the real world, like who does she normally date? And Anna responds and says that she normally dates white guys. Anna then reverses the question to Patrick, and, Patrick says he normally dates white girls. And that, obviously Colorado doesn't have much diversity, so that's what he is normally into. So we see that Patrick and Anna both discover that they are from other countries. When Anna says that she's from another country, you can literally see Patrick's wheels turning in his head. He's like trying to figure out like, okay, so this is someone else that's also not, not white. Where could she be from? And as time goes on, I think eventually they do discover that they're both Asian, but right now they're just thinking like, okay, this is interesting. And it seems like Patrick is intrigued by the fact that they're both not white, but their type is white people, if that makes sense. Like that's who they traditionally date. So I think that it's making him very curious about Anna, because they seem to be similar in that sense. So yeah, Patrick is like pacing around the pod. He's trying to think about, okay, who is this Anna girl? What ethnicity could she be? But it seems like they have a pretty good connection. I thought that I felt a little bit more in his conversation with her than I did Casey. Like they had like a good back and forth. So we then see Anna talking to a guy named Blake. And they both realize that they are not religious, and that's something that they kind of bond over. Like, they're like, okay, thank God, because it's good that they're both on the same page in terms of that. So that's not something that they have to worry about. And then Anna mentions that Blake Anna says that Blake doesn't seem homophobic or racist. And I thought that was funny, because I think she was just saying that based on his voice and what she could hear. And I was like, so what does that sound like? But I guess I knew what she meant. Like, he doesn't seem like somebody who would, like, those things would be a problem for him. So Anna is pretty funny. I like her personality a lot. She's very bubbly. She seems very outgoing. And I like that she doesn't take herself too seriously in the pods. I feel like she's doing a good job of getting to know the guys, but also having fun with it, which I really liked about Anna. I was like, she's not just going in there like drilling them with questions. Like, she's cracking jokes. She's trying to get to know people and just kind of taking like a lighter approach to the experiment. And Blake also seems very sweet. I think Blake might be my favorite guy so far in the episodes I've seen. I just feel like he's actually genuinely looking for someone. I don't really pick up on him having like any crazy red flags or any internal things that he needs therapy for. Like, he seems like he's a very well-rounded individual. So I like Blake a lot. He seems like very sweet. Okay, so then we see Blake talking to a woman named Sparkle Megan. And Megan says that this is a nickname that her friends gave her. They call her Sparkle Megan because she likes everything that sparkles. Blake says he's prioritized his career all in his 20s, and now he's ready to really focus on his dating life and settling down. Like, he doesn't want to do that anymore. So Sparkle Megan, we then kind of get introduced to Sparkle Megan, and she's talking to the camera, and she says that she's single because men are intimidated by her, by what she likes. She then goes into detail. So they're intimidated by what she likes, by her level of success, the car she drives, the house she lives in, and possibly even the air she breathes. Like, literally, she was like, they're intimidated by everything about her, basically. And whenever somebody says this, I'm always like, is that really the case, or are you leading with those things? Because I think another thing that people don't realize is, especially for women, in order for a guy to be intimidated by something about you, you also have to present a certain way. And sometimes when women are saying, okay, they're intimidated, they're creating these environments in which men, well, I don't know, like, it's usually just a questionable thing when they say that they're intimidated by me. So, and I'm going to go into this more because as time goes on, we start to see more of Megan's personality, and I have some things to say about it because, yeah, I don't agree with that intimidation. I think that she creates a lot of, I don't know, like, even some of the things she said was giving away details that she is probably a high earner and makes good money. And I didn't understand why somebody would let those details out if this is something men are intimidated by. So I'll go into that more though. So we see Megan talking to a guy named Mike. Mike is 37 years old. He seems to be pretty successful. He was a part of like a finance company, worked somewhere else, and now he's doing like, I think, real estate or something. But, you know, Mike seems like, you know, he's the type of guy that could provide for you. Like, he's doing well for himself and has attained a level of success and financial security. That's the vibe that I'm getting. So he has like an older, successful vibe to him. And they talk about what they do for work. And I low-key felt like they were speaking the same language, like they're almost the same type of person, just in male and female form. I was like, this is crazy. But you can just tell that their lifestyles are similar, and that they are in similar brackets in terms of like where they are financially. That's what I picked up on, it. They have like similar socioeconomic backgrounds. So Megan also mentioned that she's a perfectionist and that she's type A, but that she still wants a somewhat traditional relationship, even though she is, you know, well-to-do. She still does want to, you know, have the kids, be able to stay home for a period of time and have the man provide for her. So yeah, so Mike and Megan seem to have a good connection. I've yet to kind of see them go deeper than some of the superficial things about who they are as people. But I mean like emotionally deeper. So that's something I would like to see as, the episodes go on. So we then see Sparkle Megan talking to a guy named Jordan. And, she tells Jordan that they call her Sparkle Megan. Jordan wants to know where she got this nickname from, and she explains that this is what her friends call her because she likes anything that sparkles. And she then mentions to Jordan that she has a car that has a blinged out emblem. And Jordan is like, okay, well, obviously he wants to know what kind of car, because who has like a blinged out emblem on their car? Like, that's crazy, right? And then Megan says, oh, I don't want to go into details about the kind of car that I drive. Now, this is where I have to start questioning Megan, because if men are intimidated by your success, as you say, right? And who you are and the air you breathe and everything, why mention that you have an emblem on your car or that your car is in any way blinged out? I think it's strange behavior. I don't understand. I feel like these are details that you probably want to leave out if you don't want men to be intimidated by these things in the pods, right? Because they can't see you, right? So the only thing they could be intimidated by now are your words. So I would choose them wisely. I don't understand why Megan is mentioning these details if being in the pods, this is something that she doesn't want to run into, right? Where men do feel any kind of way about her lifestyle. These are details that I would leave out personally. So that's the only thing I have to say about Megan. I don't understand that. So Jordan asks what she does for work, because Jordan is trying to figure out like, what kind of girl is this? She sounds a little bougie. He's trying to fish and get some more information, right? So she tells him that what she does for work, and he kind of puts two and two together and realizes that she's pretty well-to-do, right? And Jordan lets her know that, he drives a 2013 Kia Forte. So Jordan is like the opposite of Megan, right? And Jordan is trying to let her know, like, okay, clearly, Jordan even says we have two separate aesthetics. We're like day and night, very different. But even within that difference, you do see that they have a connection. I think that Jordan brings out a side to Megan that's a little more lighthearted. She can laugh, and Jordan doesn't take himself very seriously. I feel like she kind of has a good time when she's talking to him. So Megan is still really getting on with Jordan, even though she realizes that they come from two different worlds and live very different lifestyles, it seems. So Jordan also mentions that he has a 5-year-old son named Luca, and that he actually also has a vasectomy. So, Megan is like, okay, well, I do want kids in the future. And Jordan lets her know that this is something that can be reversed. So Megan is like, okay, that's something that I can work with, going forward. So seems like they have a good connection, but because they are so different, I personally don't think that these two would make a good match. So that's just my take on it. We'll see what happens as they keep talking, but I don't necessarily think Megan should go with someone like that. I think that they might be too different. That's my opinion on it. Okay, so we go back to the women's quarters, and we see that some of the women are saying that they think Mike, the guy that's kind of older, more successful, could be somewhat of a playboy. And that he kind of gives like Rico Suave. So I think some of the girls are kind of on guard in terms of Mike. Like, they're not really selling what he's buying. Like, they're maybe suspicious of him and the kind of guy that he really is, like, in the outside world, as opposed to who he's presenting as in the pods. So I think that's interesting. And I agree. I could see Mike as being a little bit of like a bachelor type vibe, especially based on the fact that he's like a high earner. And I just don't know how much I buy that he's really looking to settle down at this point in his life. So that's where I'm like not sure. Okay, so then we're introduced to Allie. She is 27 years old, and she's stunning. She looks like an Instagram model. She does not look like someone who would ever be on this kind of show. It's very interesting, but She says she's single because she hasn't found a guy that matches her ambition. So she basically says that she normally dates guys that are not quite up to par in terms of where they are in their life, and she almost feels like she has to coach them. So I find that interesting. So she says that she just hasn't found someone that kind of matches her in terms of where she is in her life and the drive that she has in life right now. Yeah, and then another thing she said that I thought was interesting was that she is a very soft person and like very warm and kind, but that she tends to present more hard on the outside. And when she said that, I thought, I wonder if that's why she's attracting men that maybe don't really have it all together when it comes to their lifestyle. It could be because she is presenting in this harder way. That's not necessarily who she is. And it sounds like it could be some kind of defense mechanism or a way of protecting herself. But it's good that she's aware that she does that. So hopefully in the pods, she kind of lets go of some of that and is able to show that softer side of her. Okay, so we see Ali speaking to Anton. Anton is Russian and Ukrainian. I think he looks like I just put down that he looks kind of like a Wolverine, like dark features and like pretty hairy. And he says that he was raised pretty stoic for the most part, and that he doesn't really tend to show a lot of emotion. He wasn't raised in an environment where people were showing a lot of emotion. And he says that he's worked very hard for everything that he's built in his life, and that he's had to kind of get everything he has from the ground up by himself. So that's pretty commendable. It sounds like he's very hardworking and that he's proud of where he is in his life right now. So one thing that Ali wanted to know about Anton was, based on the way he is, she wanted to know if he would be able to open up emotionally, like in a relationship and even in the pods, and to Ali. And Anton assures her that he does open up when, it's somebody that he's close to, and that she shouldn't be worried that he wouldn't show that side of him. Yeah, so when he's answering this question, he says to Ali, just to confirm she's understanding what he's saying, he says something like, "Does that make sense, baby?" And when he says the term baby, guys, like the way that Ali melted in her seat, I was like, oh my gosh, like Anton might as well have proposed at that point. Like she was smitten, like she was just smiling ear to ear, but she just loved when he said that word, like baby, so much that Ali told him to repeat it. So Anton says it again. And I thought to myself, well, that's that. Like, I just kind of knew right there and then, like, Ali wants Anton, because her facial expression, like, she loved it. So, and all I can say is Anton knew what he was doing by throwing in that baby at the end. So, yeah, she really liked that. And I think that, Anton is someone that's definitely going to be one of her tops going forward. Yeah, so I just wanted to give my thoughts on Anton. I really like Anton, but I do feel like there is a question mark about him. Like, as much as he has opened up and said this and that, something about him strikes me as like a dark horse. I do feel like there is still a lot about him we do not know. So I don't really know what to say about him. I feel like I can't say for sure that, he seems like he's ready to make a commitment, like marriage and get engaged, and like that he would be a good partner, because I think that there's a lot of himself that he's still holding back. So I'm very intrigued to see more of him as the episodes go on. Okay, so we're then introduced to Edmund, and Edmund is basically like Steve Urkel. I don't know what kind of aesthetic this is, and I know this might sound crazy, but part of me is like trying to figure out if he actually dresses the way he was dressed, or if he's putting this on for the cameras. If this is really who he is, I'm like all for it. I want people to express themselves the way that they like. I think that's amazing and it's beautiful and it's okay that he's different. But part of me is like, is this real, or are you putting this on for TV? Because he's over the top. He is. He's over the top, not just in the way that he dresses, in his mannerisms, in his demeanors, but don't get me wrong, he's funny. You know, I mean, there were times in this episode that I was dying of laughter. He's hilarious, but I just can't quite figure out like who Edmund is and if this is really his aesthetic or if he's just presenting this way. So that's like the big question mark. Okay, so Edmund says that he's done dating events, apps, and that he's even tried to get introduced through a friend, like friends of friends. Nothing has worked in terms of him finding a partner. So he's excited to be a part of this experience. We then are introduced to Calabria. And Calabria is Edmund's first choice. She's 27 and she's a social worker. So Calabria in the pods was say something, right? And it would then, the camera would switch over to Edmund in the pods, and his reaction to everything she was saying was just crazy. Like she would say something like, I'm obsessed with avocado toast, and he would just fly back in his chair and like freak out like in excitement. Like he was just really excited. And I think obviously he's excited because he's talking to a Calabria. This is his first connection, like his top connection, so I get that. But his reactions were crazy. I was literally laughing out loud. Like, this guy, like, I can't take him serious. The fact that Calabria is taking him serious is interesting. But, like, I personally couldn't take him serious. Like, it's crazy. So Edmund then goes basically into like his background, and I thought this was really interesting and sad. And Edmund says that he was in foster care his whole life, and that his parents didn't have the means to take care of him in the way that they, like a parent should. And unfortunately, he was passed on from foster care home to foster care home. Sometimes he was with his parents, but it wasn't for very long because they would just lose custody again. It sounds very tumultuous. It sounds awful to go through as a kid. And I feel for Edmund. One thing about Edmund that I will say is that he does seem pretty well adjusted for somebody who's been through all that. And he has his master's degree, I believe he said. So even with that kind of upbringing, it seems like he's beat the odds. And I commend him for that, because it's just, that was probably really not easy for him at all. And a kid should not have to go through that. Edmund then mentions that he was saved by his 5th grade teacher and starts crying. Like, he just gets very emotional. And Calabria is, you know, letting him know that it's okay to cry. And Edmund is explaining that he actually wants to work in education. And I believe maybe mentor or teach kids in like elementary school, high school. He feels like based on what he experienced that he could relate to them in a different way. And I think that that's amazing. So Edmund is really excited about Calabria. So that's what we see in that connection. So then we're going to shoot over to Joe. So we're introduced to Joe, and he is a recruiter. He's 27 years old, and he's talking to Madison. So they seem to have a lot of playful banter regarding, you know, like they're talking about a date and pretending that if they were in the real world and they went on a date, they're kind of like acting out what it would be like. And, you know, they're kind of flirting and going back and forth, and it seems like they have a pretty good connection. And Madison is the one that has like the eye condition that she mentions when, I think she mentioned this like in the cast reveal, but she has an eye condition in which she could possibly be blind in the future. And yeah, so that's a whole thing, but right now they're just kind of talking, getting to know each other. And it seems like they have a pretty good, lighthearted, fun connection. So then we go back to Edmund and Allie. Edmund is still calling Allie baby, and we just see Allie smiling from ear to ear. She's just eating it up. I think she loves Edmund at this point. Yeah, so Allie then tells Edmund that she had a dream about him last night. And she basically says that in the dream, she and her mom are picking Edmund up from jail. Guys, when she said this, I was like, jail? Like, that sounds like a nightmare. But interestingly enough, she didn't see this as like a bad dream. I'm like, so I mean, would you guys not mind if your man was incarcerated? Like, I don't necessarily think that was a good dream. I'm not saying it was like a dream that's like extremely alarming, but jail? Like, what a bizarre dream. Edmund kind of laughs and he's like, oh, who knows, maybe you'll lock me up or something, or get me locked up. And I was like, I'm the kind of person, I pay attention to my dreams. So if I was Allie, I would clock that, because that is a strange dream to have. I don't really know how to interpret that. So Allie basically tells Edmund this dream. And then right after saying this dream, she proceeds to say that she loves him. Edmund says it back and proposes to Allie. So that is the first proposal that we have of this season. So Allie and Edmund are locked in. It looked like Allie and Edmund had no other connections besides themselves, which was kind of nice, because I feel like a lot of these other people that are on the show right now have multiple connections. But it seems like Allie and Edmund kind of like connected and like were locked in, and now they're engaged. So that's that. Okay, so we then go back to Jordan talking to Sparkle Megan. Okay, so these are the people that have the two opposite aesthetics. So we see Jordan saying that his son, he opens up about how his son has type 1 diabetes and explains that he hates that his son has to go through that, and that his son has like markings on his body from where he has to prick himself to take these shots for his diabetes, which is very sad. And Jordan goes on to say that it's so hard for him to see because he's like, this is my baby, like he doesn't deserve this. And Jordan explains that he would switch places with his son at any moment for him to not have to go through this. Megan can relate to this actually, because it just so happens that her dad actually also had type 1 diabetes. And Megan's dad also, he did pass away, and she explains that part of him passing away was partly due to complications from type 1 diabetes, but also due to like his age and some other factors as well. So this is something that they connect on, because it's just like, what are the odds that his son has that going on? And then Megan's dad also had something similar. So they bond over this and talk about that. So we then go back to Mike and Megan. Okay, so Mike is the guy that's more successful, more Rico Suave, and he's talking to Sparkle Megan. So once again, this isn't a couple where you can envision what their life would look like on the outside world. Like as they're talking about some of the things that they do, literally Megan will be like, oh my God, I do the same thing. I think Mike mentioned that he had a Tempur-Pedic bed, and Megan was like, oh my God, I have the same bed. Like they're basically the same people in different genders. Okay. So we already see kind of what their life would look like. Yeah. So they also have a good connection, but once again, I do still feel like they talk about things that are kind of more surfacey. So we then go to Blake and Megan, and Blake opens up to Megan about his dad's passing. Okay. And that he regrets, not being closer to him, and that's something that he wished that he had kind of came to like a resolution, or had talked to him, or just had really taken advantage of the time he had when his dad was still alive. And he thinks that some of the, maybe feelings he had towards his dad stopped him from having that closer relationship. So yeah, and then Megan talks about the day her father passed, and she said, we see Megan saying to the cameras that every time she talks to Blake, she gets giddy. She's really excited about that connection. So we then end this episode with a teaser of Allie and Edmund about to do their reveal. And that's the end of episode 1. Please like, comment, and subscribe down below. And I have new videos that come out every week. Subscribe with the bell, and please let me know what you thought of these people and your opinions down below in the comments. Thanks.
Why you always in the mood? I'm acting brand new. I ain't trying to tell you what to do, but try to play it cool.